Hi, ahoy, quality management people, and welcome to this episode of our Quality Solutions series, expanding your quality ecosystem and connecting with external stakeholders. Thanks for joining today. As always, our registrants will receive a link to the recording. The session today is being recorded, as you just heard the autonomous woman announce. And be sure to use that GoToWebinar panel to ask any questions or share your thoughts during the presentation. And we should have enough time at the end to have some Q&A with you all as well. I'm Angela Anderson, Product Marketing Manager with ETQ, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tom Barlow, one of ETQ's in-house quality experts and strategic solution engineer. And Tom has a whopping 20 years. Is it 20 years now with
20
ETQ?
years. Yes, it
Amazing.
is.
Helping quality professionals all over the world get the most out of their investment in their QMS. Tom, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
All right, you ready to talk about expanding the quality system?
Let's do this thing.
All right. Okay, so before we really dive in here, I'll just give you a little intro to ETQ for folks who may not be fully familiar. So over 30 years, for over 30 years, just a hair before Tom joined, ETQ has empowered quality champions to use quality management as a catalyst for business success. We offer a scalable or flexible, scalable, easy to use EQMS solution that's purpose-built to connect quality processes to all areas of your organization. And we're going to be talking a lot about that today. We have industry knowledge and expertise across many industries, which is reflected in our diverse customer base of over 600 customers, representing discrete and process manufacturing, food and bev, consumer goods, pharma, med device, electronics, and more. We aim to be a trusted advisor for you, helping guide you along your quality journey from making that initial business case to project planning to implementing and onboarding and beyond as you expand your quality system. We are a part of Hexagon, and that's a global leader in sensor, software, and autonomous manufacturing solutions. In today's environment, we know that quality management never gets simpler. It's always more complex, and there's so many challenges to address. Inconsistent and manual processes impacting your productivity, that's wasted capacity, human and otherwise, that could be deployed elsewhere. Siloed systems forcing duplication of work, that's more wasted hours on something that could be automated, not to mention limiting the scalability of your system. And of particular relevance to our topic today, unresolved issues delaying product to market and weak supplier relationships kind of adding to that unknown risk. If you've got suppliers sending you non-conforming material and you don't have a way to address those issues in a consistent and timely way, then the cost of dealing with those issues quickly grows and basically destroys your margins. These issues span a range of impacts to the business, and they illustrate how quality management touches the entire product life cycle. Every step of the way, there's opportunity to infuse a quality mindset and quality process from product design, designing quality into the product at the outset to supply chain, ensuring that receipt of high quality goods from suppliers by holding them accountable to define specifications. We'll be talking more about that today. And on the manufacturing side, just managing that quality during the manufacturing and assembly process. Logistics, ensuring delivery of high quality goods to distribution and customers, all the way through to sales. When all of those preceding steps are successful, then you can sell the product at its best. And then ultimately that customer usage feedback. So gathering feedback on quality and performance of your product once it's in the field. And that's super critical in regulated industries, but really also it's a key input for continuous improvement for any industry. When that feedback consistently can make its way back into new product design, then you have a truly closed loop process, and it's a beautiful thing. And added to that challenge though, and what a digital QMS allows you to do is to scale those local procedures into a central harmonized system across all your sites. Then you've got visibility into trends and systemic issues that you can then address globally. Got a problem in Cleveland, might be the same problem they're having in Billings. So being able to have visibility to share that information and that process improvement, it's much easier to do that with a QMS system, a digital QMS. We believe you can mitigate all kinds of risks throughout that life cycle through the practice of those closed loop quality processes and going beyond compliance to a state of proactive continuous improvement that lifts your organization above the rest and results in that competitive advantage every business wants to achieve. So as mentioned, the only way to manage that complexity and to harmonize those global processes and automate the closed loop workflows is to have the right tools and technology. In other words, a purpose-built digital QMS solution. And the necessary workflows and traceability that are key to that are just not possible with paper or manual processes. So far in our ETQ Quality Journey series, we've done a few of these presentations. We've covered, we started off covering the essential information for first-time QMS software buyers and how to lay that solid foundation for your QMS by adopting out of the box from our core application set like doc control, training management, audits, corrective action. Then we looked at accelerating your journey by connecting those foundational processes with the data and workflows of other teams and enterprise systems. And now today, we'll examine the expand phase, and we'll look at extending your QMS to some additional stakeholders, including those outside your organization, like suppliers or customers. In the expand phase, think about widening that quality management net to give suppliers an active role in your quality processes, or moving those quality inputs upstream, like we saw in the product lifecycle, move it upstream into new product development efforts. You'll hear from Tom more about how your suppliers can access Reliance in a secure way to have visibility to their supplier rating or material specifications, or respond to corrective actions without all of that hassle of back and forth email and details getting lost and communication dropping off. So imagine a world where you can hold your suppliers accountable because all of that supporting documentation for a corrective action are right there in one place, and the business rules that you can configure in the system around that can automatically communicate supplier status to into your ERP and to your procurement teams. And that's a really powerful use case. So in the next session, we're going to explore the possibilities in the transform phase. So more on that to come. And so with that, yes, I think that's, yeah, and I think just the last thing I wanted to say here was, kind of looking at your quality journey holistically, you can really kind of see the picture now of how your QMS can become that hub for connecting systems all across your organization and set you up to create that competitive advantage. So now at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Tom to dazzle you with more information about ETQ Reliance and talk in detail about expanding your quality system to additional stakeholders. So, all right, Tom, are you ready for the
changeover?
The changeover?
Yes, please. Let's go.
Okay, here it comes. Here it comes.
All right. Okay. How did that work? Can you guys see it?
Beautiful.
All right. Well, thanks everyone, and thank you, Angela, for that information. So we're going to do a little overview of ETQ Reliance platform itself first. What our system is really a workflow-based business process platform that's highly configurable. It has 42 pre-configured applications built on one agile platform that I mentioned was highly configurable. It's also hosted in the cloud, so it makes it extremely easy for you to access it, and including external users like suppliers, and we'll talk about that in just a couple of moments. The system itself, the way we package it, we have a core set of applications, and we discuss these in the first step of the process, the Ignite step, which defines the core processes around your quality management system. And you can see the common things like doc control training, corrective action, change management audits, a whole set of utilities on the platform that get you started in the journey. And then we have a whole bunch of application sets available on the right side that include maybe 4 or so apps each to allow you to expand on that particular journey, which is really what we're talking about today. So we're going to tell some stories at a very high level around 3 of those additional stories. We're going to focus a little bit more on supply chain quality. I have some process overviews that can show how everything fits together in the system, combining a combination of core apps with additional applications and processes to help you to expand your journey. And then we can discuss very high level health and safety, because if you think about it, an issue is an issue is an issue. It could be an audit finding, it could be a non-conformance, it could be a customer complaint, it could be an incident or accident that occurs from a health and safety perspective. It doesn't matter if it's for a different, idea, like a different group. Health and safety is different than quality, but as an organization, you still have issues and you still have to deal with those issues, which could resolve themselves through things like corrective action management. In addition, there are a set of processes around new product introduction that can help you to consistently define changes, manage change, as well as manage the introduction or change of products as they go through your process. As you can imagine, that could be quite complex too. So the 3 application sets that I mentioned that we'll be focusing on, so supply chain quality in the middle is the one that has these 4 apps that are listed right here. The health and safety on the right side has 4 additional applications. And then on the left side is the new product introduction, which is, you can see those 5 applications. So the way it works is the system itself is a platform. Every application looks and feels the same. For those that have seen our previous sessions in this Quality Journey series or any other series, you would see that everything looks and feels the same. So the way we package our system is that you can start with the core, and then you can choose to add additional application sets that sit on the same platform. They look and feel just the same, and all the apps interact with each other. So that's how essentially you're expanding your quality journey. There are multiple options as to how you could go. So a lot of our customers prioritize their own journey based upon their requirements, based upon their areas of most need. And eventually, the goal is to have one harmonized process. As Angela mentioned, the ability to scale across the globe is very powerful because it gives you the backbone to manage everything that you need to manage. And in other cases, as you'll see on the bottom, system integrations, we also allow for integration with external systems to leverage information that you have in other places as well. Before I jump into the stories, I want to reiterate what we call the platform genetics, because these 6 platform capabilities are infused across all of the applications on the platform, regardless of whether they're configured by us. And in fact, a little secret about adaptability, which is actually the first genetic, that's the configurability of our system. Our system is completely configurable to the point that we use our own designer to pre-configure the 42 applications that we provide in the system when you start using our system, based on our 30 years of best practices experience. If we used our tool to pre-configure the apps, that means that you and your non-technical administrators, once they're trained on how to use our system, can use the same designer to either modify existing configurations to make it your own processes, adding new fields to forms, modifying workflows, building in business rules to automate processes. But you can also use our platform as a development tool, quote unquote, to build new applications from scratch. You can drag and drop new forms, create new fields on those forms, workflows to automate those forms through processes. The key and the secret of, it's not really a best kept secret, but the power of that is that that new application, hypothetically, that you would build would look just like every other app. It would work just like every other app, and it would share these same 6 platform genetics. So these are really key differentiators within our system that allow you to scale and scale very quickly. Another one is called connectivity. Connectivity means the relationship between processes. So yes, each individual process can be configured to meet your own requirements, but almost more important than the individual process is the relationship between processes. So with connectivity, You can leverage information from other apps. You can launch other records and other applications. You can inherit details from one source record into a new record. So that saves you the time of having to re-enter it. It helps automate the process. There are automatic links back and forth between related records in the system so that you have full traceability. And we'll talk about that in those 3 stories. The main star of that show is going to be the connectivity, because you'll see diagrams. The first one is going to be built kind of gradually. I left that one animated because we'll spend more time on that. The last 2 will be already pre-built, and we'll just discuss it at a much higher level just to save time. But the important part is the relationships between processes, as well as the ability to integrate with almost anything externally. So you have ERP systems, CRM systems, PLM systems. You could name any acronym that you want to. That's a system that you have crucial information in place that you will continue to use. Our idea is, or the concept around that, is to leverage that information. We can look up information like suppliers and customers and products. We can pull that from other systems. We can have integration where a product inspection through your MES tool could automatically launch a product nonconformance record in our system, inheriting the source information, the product, the quantity, the defect code, and then the workflow that's configured into our system would automate that through predefined steps. So it's really, really powerful to achieve automation, and that's what the integration helps you, allows you to do that. The next platform capability I'd like to discuss is contextual awareness. Angela mentioned the ability to scale across the globe. Our system supports that through what's called a location hierarchy. So you define your own organizational structure. Once you define the hierarchy, the system has location fields that exist on all records in every app, whether it's in the system already that we've configured, or even any new apps that you would configure. When you do that, there's a record. Every record in the system has a location associated with it and a level on the hierarchy. It could be a corporate level record. It could be a business unit record, or specific to a continent, for example, or specific to an individual location. That same location field exists on the user's profile. So when a user from anywhere in the world logs in, the system knows where they are. It can also be set up to pre-filter the information, dynamically only allow them to see the information that they need to see. And also it could be in their native language that was configured into the system. We have a utility called localization that lets you define any language in the system. We do provide 4 additional languages above and beyond English out of the box: German, French, Spanish, Mandarin, Chinese, but it supports double byte characters. So Korean, Japanese could be configured, or any other language that's supported by Microsoft, essentially, so that users at the local plants or facilities can use it in their native language and would be very comfortable doing so. What's interesting about the hierarchy and the ability to dynamically filter extends itself to the next genetic, which we call external collaboration, which really allows us to do a lot of this expansion that we're talking about, because we're talking about supplier interactions or external users that are not part of your company, but you still want them to interact with processes on the platform. So this allows you to extend the hierarchy to include suppliers or contractors or anybody outside the organization. Because our system is hosted in the cloud, there's no concerns about security or anyone getting into your servers, because the system is already in the cloud, but it has a very robust security model to make sure that people can only access the information that they're allowed to access. So you can route supplier corrective actions right to your suppliers. You can route documents to them for review and approval, or PPAPs, or any other process. They can initiate a change request and say, hey, we'd like to propose this change. Would you approve that? And then the workflow could be configured to send it to all the right people within your organization to approve or not approve that, or even collaborate back and forth on honing the actual change. And we'll talk about that a little bit with the NPI process as well. So it allows you to literally allow your suppliers to interact with any business process. And then on top of that, anywhere access, in addition to the scalability anywhere in the world, you can access it on virtually any device. So you can use the browser on your tablet, for example, Firefox or Chrome, for example. That's very convenient, because you might be conducting an audit somewhere. Maybe it's a supplier audit. You can just carry that tablet around. You've got access to the web version. We have what's called responsive design that automatically adjusts the forms to optimize based on the width of the form that you're looking at. So there's that. You can also use the mobility app, which is available for Apple or Android devices on a phone or a tablet. and that gives you the additional ability to work online or offline. So if you're going to go somewhere where you're not sure if you're going to have access to the web, if you're going to conduct an audit, you can download the audit checklists to your local device. The other thing about using the mobility, whether it's browser or the app, you can use the onboard functionality like voice to text. So you're conducting an audit, you click a button, the microphone button, and record your observation, which gets translated into text. You can also use the onboard camera to take pictures, for example, which then automatically get attached. The other use case, since we're talking health and safety, is the ability to use it to record new records like an incident report. Everyone has a phone on them, right? So if they're walking around the facility or in the field somewhere, working a project or working in a production line, and they see an accident or at least a hazard observation that needs to be captured, they could use their phone, capture it, take a picture, click button, takes them 3 minutes to capture it. The workflow would already know who it gets assigned to. So that's why we talk about these genetics, because they're so crucial in allowing you to implement the system and scale it pretty quickly across a relatively large or very large organization. So today, we're going to be discussing these two main genetics, which is the external collaboration and briefly on the integration story. So that's the introduction of the platform. As I mentioned, I have those 3 different diagrams. This one's going to be animated because it'll just take a minute. I'll tell the story as we go through it, and then the other 2, I'll tell the story at a much higher level just for the purpose of getting into the demonstration, so Angela can get onto some use cases, and then we can, of course, have a Q&A. So the first thing is, when you're looking at supply chain management, you want to establish who are your suppliers and what are the products and services that they provide. So we have an application that's part of our core platform. It's one of the utilities called Suppliers, Materials, and Chemicals. But rather than you having to manually manage the information in this, we synchronize with any ERP system or multiple ERP systems if you're a large organization that has multiple ERP systems. So the goal is to leverage information that someone else is responsible for managing so that you don't have to manage it yourself. Imagine the administrative task it would be to manage all suppliers across a relatively large or very large organization. But if it's already in your ERP system, we can synchronize with it. We can synchronize with the products and services they provide. We can synchronize with the acceptance criteria for those products and services. We can pull all that right into our system. And then we also might have an onboarding process for that supplier. There may be several things that have to happen. So using workflow, you could configure a qualification process. What has to happen? What documentation do they have to provide? You could route it right to your supplier and say, hey, we need, A, are you ISO certified? B, if so, please provide the certificate. Click and link it right here or attach it right here, or any other information that's needed. It could include a supplier audit or questionnaire that you want to send to the supplier or use yourself to answer questions about that supplier. There may be a PPAP required to qualify any parts or products that they're going to provide to you. We have a robust application to manage the production part approval process, or scaled back, if you don't do a full quote unquote PPAP, you can still define what has to happen from a supplier to provide proof to us that they can produce the product in a quality way that meets our criteria. So it could be a watered down version of PPAP. It doesn't have to even be called PPAP, but it could be a way of qualifying new products and services. The external collaboration that I described already allows you to send the PPAP request right to your supplier. So you're sitting at your desk, you create a PPAP for a supplier in a certain product, you click a button, you might even define the level of PPAP if you're involved in that process. So that might predefine what has to be provided by the supplier, and then it sends the supplier an email automatically assigning that PPAP to them, and they would see it on their homepage. In fact, in a few moments, the first thing I'm going to do is log in as an external supplier and show you what a simple homepage would look like with assignments, with easy access to information that's going on within the system. Once you're doing business with that supplier, so once you've got the supplier qualified, you've got all the products and services that they provide defined and accepted, then you can start to do business with that supplier. So you can either use our own receiving and inspection application that's on our platform, that's part of the supplier quality application set, the supply chain quality. It lets you do inspections, literally based on the acceptance criteria that were defined in the material profile. You can also use your external MES tool or ERP system to do inspections if that's something that you do, and that's certainly perfectly fine. But in this case, instead of launching a nonconformance right from our incoming inspection application, you could do it through an integration with your MES or your ERP. In either case, you've achieved automation. So when there's an issue, it automatically launches a nonconformance, which then has its own workflow with pre-configured business rules. It knows who it's assigned to. It knows how long it should take. It lets them disposition the nonconformance. There could be an integration back into your ERP system to put it on hold or move it, scrap it, rework it, whatever the requirements might be. Once again, achieving automation. And imagine the time savings in not allowing a lot of time to go by between the identification of the problem and the resolution of the problem. So there's a lot of power in there. In addition to the nonconformance, of course, because this product came from a supplier, you can click a button, and using connectivity, which we spoke of when I talked about the genetics, it allows you to launch a SCAR. It inherits the details from the NCMR into the SCAR. So from that perspective, the automation prevents you from having to retype or re-enter things. Once again, the workflow would then allow you to route right to your supplier. So the external collaboration capability or the platform genetic allows your supplier to receive an assignment email from the system. That SCAR would also show up on their homepage. The other thing about our system for any workflow is that our system also has a platform utility called escalation management to track upcoming due dates as they approach. So it reminds people to make sure that they get things done in a timely manner. So in this scenario, whether it's a PPAP, SCAR, or anything else that's assigned to your supplier, think about how much time you may be spending today in managing and following up with your suppliers. With standard workflow in our system, it's doing that automatically. So it's going to start sending reminders to your supplier, another email with a hyperlink back to that record that says your SCAR is due in 3 days or 4 days. Please respond. And if they don't respond, as inferred by the term escalation, it might escalate a few days later to the supplier again, but also the internal supplier quality engineer within your organization. So the concept of workflow is really simple in concept. It makes sure that people do work. They get their things done. They're held accountable for their tasks. But workflow, if you extrapolate across all the applications on the platform, and the fact that it's in a very simple, easy to use interface with linking between all those related processes, it becomes infinitely more powerful. And then if you scale that across a global organization, it's really mind-blowing how much efficiency that you can gain from having a global platform to automate business processes and automate business processes with integration with external systems. In addition to the SCAR, there may be a situation where there's a nonconformance and you have maybe a use as is disposition, and you have to make a temporary change to the standard process. Maybe it's a supplier product where it's maybe you could use it as is. Maybe you could negotiate with that supplier and somehow change the terms of the deal with the supplier about that. But the challenge becomes, how do you approve the deviation and how do you communicate the deviation? So there are a few ways that can be done. We do have an application called Plan Deviation. So using the connectivity, you can launch a deviation request using workflow to approve it, to specify what the deviation is. But then you can also define any documents. And one of the things we discussed in our Ignite phase series of this series was the fact that our document control application allows you to create, approve, review, and distribute documents electronically. So that means that any user, whether it's an internal or an external user, can literally have access to a list of approved documents that pertain to them, and they'll know that they'll always have access to the most recently approved document. In this case, we have to communicate a temporary change to one or more documents. So what we're doing is using the power of connectivity to link to any documents that are affected by the deviation, and only once that deviation gets approved through the workflow, it moves to a special step called active. And then from that point until the point that the deviation expires, anyone that looks at any of those documents that are affected by the deviation would see a message that says there's a deviation with a hyperlink to the deviation to tell them that there's a deviation. Very powerful process. We've seen many customers struggle with this before implementing our system, communicating it manually, never being quite right, missing things, not communicating it clearly somehow. There's no question about it this way. And then when the deviation expires, the link disappears and it's back to business as usual. So you could have affected any number of documents at once without actually touching those documents. It's just one process, which is the deviation gets approved and then it might expire on a certain date. In addition to that, we also have, of course, the internal corrective action, which was discussed in our Ignite phase series of the series. So that allows you to do an internal corrective action against the issue if necessary. Now, everything that we've described so far is a transactional record. So you're on a day-to-day basis, you're qualifying suppliers, auditing suppliers, doing PPAPs, identifying incoming inspection results and nonconformances and scars. All this time, the system is capturing all this data around your suppliers. And when it comes to supplier rating, what we've seen is prior to implementing a system like ours, you may have a siloed system, you may have information that gets pulled from different places and it's very manual. You may not ever quite collect everything because it's so difficult to do that, especially if you have a large number of suppliers. So we have an application that's part of our supply chain quality application set that allows you to, and this is why we call it expand, because you're taking next level information, building on what's already been implemented, and now you're starting to use that data to automatically rate not just every supplier, but every product and service that supplier provides to you. So you might set up scheduled rating reports monthly or quarterly where the system will pull in relative percentages of information from all these different sources into what we call a score for that product. It might be 85%. And then there's a separate rating profile that translates that into a rating. Is it high? Is it low? Is it excellent, good, fair, poor? What's the color? Is it blue? Is it green? Is it yellow? Is it red? So it allows you to automatically rate the products and services that your suppliers provide. Now, as the organization grows, you might have different facilities of your own organization that are receiving products from the same supplier, or you may have different facilities within your supplier that are providing you different products and services, and each may have different capabilities and different scores relative to their products. We've had customers that have implemented our system to manage it to that level. And then what happens is, when you have that kind of information, you can hold your suppliers accountable. And literally, we have customers that charge their suppliers back for the inconvenience of having nonconformances that were caused because of the products and services that they provided to them. So we have quite a few stories around that. We are not going to discuss it now. We actually have a webinar next Thursday, I believe, to discuss. We have one of our customers that's going to be talking with us about supply chain quality. So all this data, not only do you have the convenience of automatically rating every product and service, but then the real savings and the real benefit is the feedback loop that occurs as a result of that. So if you think about it, rating of each product is really related to risk, directly related to risk. If the rating is high, that means that there's a relatively low risk that the next shipment is going to not be in compliance. If it's a low rating, there's a higher probability that the product will not be in compliance. And you have hard data that shows that based on history. So what we can do, and I'm just going to reanimate this, the feedback loop is, how do you respond to that when you either initially go to cut a purchase order against that supplier? So for example, we've had customers do integrations with their ERP systems where they go to cut a PO against a certain product, it queries our system and says, hey, wait a second, we have a low rating. You maybe want to reconsider ordering that part from that supplier, maybe order it from somebody else. The other thing that we've seen is a more stringent or less stringent inspection regime that occurs as a result of the incoming product if you do order from that supplier. So we do support a thing called skip lot, which allows you to skip a certain number of inspections based on a certain number of receipts. If it's a high score, if it's a low score, low rating, it's going to force 100% inspection. So the idea is to protect yourself, risk-based in dealing with your suppliers. And what that does is it saves you real time and resources. You're not spending all the same time inspecting the ones that are high quality just because you may have something with low quality. So it's using a very, much more intelligent approach to that. So that's the supply chain story. And what I'd like to do is just quickly introduce a couple of others. And because of time, we didn't want to spend too much time on this. But the idea here is that for health and safety, we have an accidents and safety reporting application that lets you record issues. And I kind of introduced this earlier. Someone does something unsafe, or there's an actual accident or security incident or whatever it might be. You can capture that. You also might be doing a planned activity such as a facility walk or a Gemba walk or behavior-based safety inspection, which is just a checklist, maybe a couple of questions on a daily basis that you're doing in your facilities on a day-to-day basis. Or maybe you're conducting an audit that's planned. So both of these are also opportunities to potentially identify a hazard observation or an actual incident. So with connectivity, you can click a button, right from any of these two source records and launch an incident report. It would go through an investigation with a risk assessment to assess the risk of that incident. You could then determine and report actually right to OSHA and your insurance companies, for example, or workman's comp with the data. That's another huge savings. A lot of organizations spend a tremendous amount of time on reporting to these agencies. If the investigation yields and the risk assessment is high, perhaps, you can click a button and launch a corrective action. And we already discussed this when we talked about the Ignite phase, right? So it's robust workflow, root cause analysis, action planning. But in this case, the actions that you might take are related to other processes that are involved with safety. So yes, we already talked about document control, but safety people need control documents too, right? So they have their procedures, their policies in the same document control system as you have your quality stuff. It's all one organization, so why not just have one process for it? And then we have other processes like job safety analysis, which is a very robust application to analyze individual tasks related to operations. You can do a risk assessment, you can put actions in place. After you put the actions in place, you can then do a residual risk assessment to show the big risk picture and show that you've done the safety assessment of all your different processes. You might have safety data sheets. Any one of these things might have records in which that have to be modified or revised or reviewed, at least, as a result of the corrective action that came from an accident. So the idea here is that it's all tied together. So that's why we call it expand, because you're not reinventing the wheel. What you're doing is you're gaining momentum as you increase the implementation of additional processes. And the reason we tell these stories is because it makes sense to really implement them together. You're going to exponentially increase the ability to implement additional processes on the platform because they all look and feel just like what you've already implemented if you're doing it in the Ignite or the Accelerate phase that we discussed previously. The configuration is the same skill set, implementation is the same skill set, your users are already familiar with it. So if they learn how to look up documents and do corrective actions, they can intuit their way around any of these other processes. So that's really the power of expanding on the implementation of our system. And then of course, related to any of this could be training. That's part of our training management app. So one last thing I'll mention before I get into a very short demonstration is the idea of the new product introduction or the product design process. We talked about change management. We can integrate with your PLM or ERP system. The change management might be a request to make a change or create a new product. There could be its own workflow built in to approve that change or not approve that change, justify that change, do a business case, cost analysis, anything that has to happen. And of course, the possibility exists that you either don't approve it, which means that no more has to be done, or you approve it, in which case, using connectivity, you could launch a project, such as an APQP project or any other type of project. We have an application that manages that called Project Control. It uses predefined tasks that are associated with milestones that would be assigned using workflow. So those tasks, as many and as complex as they may be, will be handled using standard workflow functionality. So once again, handling complexity with simplicity. Users would have tasks assigned to them. Those tasks may require that they do things, maybe create one or more documents, which you could use our doc control app for, but link into the task. So you have a traceability between the request, the project, the task that says we have to do a document creation of 5 or 10 or 30 different documents, and then links to those documents, or failure mode and effects analysis, or PPAPs, or meetings that have to take place. So long story short, this is just another story that we wanted to just briefly introduce to discuss from an expand perspective, that there are really these three different stories are going to help you expand. And it's really up to you and your own priorities as an organization as to which ones you choose to do next. Or if you have different teams, you might have a health and safety team working on one. You might have a design team, R&D team working on this one at the same time. So that's the beauty of the platform, is it's going to allow you to expand as much as you want. You're not going to reach a limit. You're not going to reach a point where you say, gosh, I wish we could do this. The system just technically won't allow it to happen. That would never happen with ETQ Reliance. ETQ Reliance is a completely scalable system to allow you to implement any business process with integration with external systems. So that being said, what I propose to do is I'm going to do a brief demonstration just because of the time. So I'm going to click on browser, and I'm going to log in as a hypothetical end user, or excuse me, a hypothetical supplier. And the supplier might have a very simple homepage that looks like this. So for each of these things that are sitting here on the assignment section, the person would have initially received an assignment email with some information about what it is that they were assigned to, including a hyperlink, which would bring them right to the record in question. So the second way that anybody can see any assignments is something sitting on their homepage. So here's a SCAR, here's a PPAP, here's a supplier assessment, and here is actually a training assignment. That's interesting. We discussed this during the Ignite phase of the journey, the relationship between documents and the creation, review, approval, and revision of documents and training. So documents can be identified as training requirements. But what about a situation where, or wouldn't it be nice to be in a world where you have documents that you want your suppliers to acknowledge their awareness of? You can leverage that here, because using external collaboration, as I mentioned, once you set the suppliers up as users and the security model and the location hierarchy is set up, you can include suppliers or any other external user in any business process you want to. So this is a training assignment. The supplier can also set up their own preferences and say, hey, I want to be able to access the documents all the time, or I want to be able to access my supplier profile all the time. I also want to be able to see my supplier rating all the time. So this view is coming right out of the supplier rating application. These are the 8 or so products that this supplier provides, and it's showing me the real time the rating. But the beauty is that dynamic filtering is only showing the supplier the ones that pertain to them. If another supplier logs in and looks at the same view, and you could have 600 suppliers, it would automatically show them their stuff. So that's when I talk about scalability and the ability to filter information, you can make it feel like it's a silo and people can only see their own things, but there's a whole big world of information that's going on out there, and that all that data is readily available for you internally within your organization. I could also log in as someone internal. So I'm just going to log in as myself here for a second. And you'll see that my homepage, because I'm involved in many more processes, is a little bit more involved. In addition, it gives me some metrics. So we have a utility that's recently been introduced into our platform called Charts, which is part of our centralized reporting and alerts tool, which lets me build charts that give me access to information. So this is you can see we have several examples of chart types, but this would allow me to click on the chart, and I can say this is open corrective actions by location. I want to learn more about this location. So it drills down and filters by department. I want to learn more about that. And ultimately it passes it through into the view, which is automatically filtered based on the pieces of the pie that I clicked on or the bars that I clicked on in the chart. So just wanted to mention that very quickly. That's not necessarily part of the expand phase. That's really part of the core, but I just wanted to mention that quickly. The other thing I wanted to mention is, of course, if a user was assigned something, and I'll just touch just a quick nod to health and safety. Here's an example of an incident report that was assigned to me. Someone could have used their mobile device to capture this, as I mentioned, taken 2.5 minutes to capture the quick couple of fields with a picture, click on send. The system knows who it gets assigned to. It sends it like this with a description of what the issue is, but then there's a hyperlink here to the record in question. And if I click on it, it's just going to open up the record very quickly. So this brings me to the incident report. You can see the details of the incident. You can see a description. You can see a picture, which was in this case could have been snapped from a mobile device. So I saw something. It took me 3 minutes to report it. I sent it immediately. Then whoever's responsible for this could do a risk assessment. They could determine using our risk utility, which is part of our platform. It's designed to be a centralized place for risk assessments from any source. And then we can determine if a corrective action is needed. So someone clicked on this button, and now it launched a corrective action, which will bring us back to, once again, the Ignite phase. You've already implemented corrective action, right? You've already got it in place. You're already good with it. Now you can just expand by including additional source processes into the corrective action process. So Angela, I think at this point, just for timing's sake, I might pause.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you so much, Tom. That was really great to see, the kind of conceptual overviews kind of come to life within the platform and all the capability that's there. So thank you. Fantastic demonstration.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we have a few minutes here. I just wanted to share to bring another level of life to everything that Tom is talking about. Just some examples of these things happening in the real world. So I just had a couple of customer stories that I'll walk you through, and then we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. So the first one I wanted to share is Rheem. They're the largest manufacturer of water heating products in North America. They provide services and solutions for cooling, heating, and water heating all over the world. So back in spring 2021 timeframe,
Angela,
yes,
are you
sir.
sharing? I hate to say this, but are you sharing
Oh
your
my
screen?
goodness. Yes, thank you so much for saying
Sorry about
something. I
that.
appreciate it. Yeah, we didn't do our handoff, and we're so good at it too, the handoff, and we didn't do it.
So disappointed.
Sorry, everyone. Stand
That's
by.
it happens to the best of us.
I mean, I could, do some interpretive dance or something.
Oh,
Okay, bring it to me, and how's that looking? Better?
fantastic.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, continuing on. So I guess it was, spring 2021 timeframe. Rheem had this kind of massive market opportunity during that boom in construction. But like a lot of folks, they faced some supply chain issues. And so with ETQ, they were able to quickly create what they called an emergency PPAP process within their existing PPAP implementation and allowing a fast track way to approve parts and suppliers, just to be able to move a little more quickly through that process during that unusual time. And Rheem does credit Reliance with helping them overcome many disruptions by disruptions by allowing them to quickly build those new applications to support those that quickly changing business environment. And some of those examples include they set up a couple of surveys. So there was, during COVID, there was kind of this threat of, potential border closings. So Rheem quickly built out a survey to send to their suppliers in Mexico to kind of help the company determine that the level of risk should there be, a shutdown that happens. So it just was giving them kind of information to anticipate some decision making. There's also a situation where the EPA, from a regulatory standpoint, EPA announced, these certain chemicals would no longer be allowed to be used in production. So in a similar fashion, Rheem set up a risk survey for their suppliers and distributed that, allowing them to, kind of providing them the tool to assess their company's own risk, so the supplier's own risk, and sharing that information and being able to set that up and have it running and distributed and collecting data within just a few days of that announcement. And then also, as you kind of saw in some of Tom's demonstration there, the ability to qualify and onboard new suppliers through that portal and managing that relationship through the portal. So you can see the quote here, the quality manager, Cliff, he says that Reliance is their secret weapon for all of these kind of fast changing business conditions and being able to react in an effective manner. The next one I'd like to share is Nutrien. They're the world's largest provider of crop inputs. So they produce and distribute 27 million tons of potash, nitrogen, and phosphate products for agricultural, industrial, and feed customers all over the world. And Dustin, who's our quality champion over there, was looking for a solution that would maximize visibility and guarantee timeliness of data to satisfy compliance audits was their main area of focus. But it also had to be easy to use. They have a global workforce and folks with varying levels of comfort with technology. So the picture goes beyond that. It wasn't just about compliance. Obviously, there's regulatory aspects to these materials they're producing, but they take safety very seriously, a very strong safety culture. And their core values, you can see here, is safe home every day. They needed to make sure that they were getting insights into what their employees are seeing on the front lines from a health, safety, and environment perspective. And doing all of that manually was just not going to work for them in the long term. And also kind of that scalability aspect that we talked about earlier. So Reliance has become that foundation for their safety culture through basically a kind of a simple hazard identification form that they use across their different facilities. So they collect this data from their kind of frontline users into Reliance, and it becomes the source for all their health, safety, and environmental reporting. And it's allowed them to identify those trends in housekeeping and see those, issues with potential slips, trips, fall hazards, those types of things, and then deliver actionable insights to prevent those things, those injuries, and hopefully no fatal accidents. And that puts them in that position to proactively live that safety culture commitment rather than just reacting to things as they occur. And of note, they were also one of our Innovation Award winners for the mobile application that they developed to digitize their on-site health and safety inspections. So a nice, great story from Nutrien, making use of forms to collect data from various stakeholders. All right, and then the last one I wanted to share is, whoops, I just clicked one too many times. Symmetry Surgical is a leading healthcare technology and solutions provider of high quality surgical instrumentation and minimally invasive surgical devices. They manufacture more than 26,000 medical instruments and devices across all specialties, and they serve over 14,000 customers worldwide. So very broad reach, a huge portfolio of what they offer, a lot of moving parts there. And they're kind of an interesting case because, if we think back to the Ignite phase that we talked about a couple sessions ago, they took advantage of deploying those core applications out of the box. They wanted to get up and running as quickly as possible. So they took advantage of all the pre-configured workflows that we've got out of the box. And then by harmonizing over time their practices, the information, the records across their sites with Reliance, they've not only gone green by kind of minimizing their paper record footprint, but they've also realized a number of other quantitative benefits. So their complaint management application that they've configured saves them over 40 hours of engineering time each month. Hours that can be deployed elsewhere to more useful endeavors. Dock control has effectively eliminated their manual dock control activities, saving 3 hours a month at a single facility. Training and across facilities, that can really add up. Training management and testing confirmation apps save 10 engineering hours a month, so they're able to automate those follow-ups and just making sure people are getting the training that they need, and for compliance as well. Customer feedback, that's another application that they've deployed, and that allowed them to identify a hidden rework factory affecting 0.5% of shipments. So maybe a small percentage, but at the volume with which they're operating, those numbers can add up very quickly. And it's also, like we've discussed today, that given them the ability to collaborate with their suppliers on corrective actions, and that's led to significant reduction in their corrective action closure time. So a lot of streamlining of operations and just saving that time, energy, resource that could be deployed elsewhere. All right, so those are a few of the ways where all those things that Tom was talking about are taking shape in the real world. And with ETQ, you are in good company, not only Ream, Nutrien, and Symmetry Surgical, but hundreds of other customers of all shapes and sizes across many different industries. And they all recognize that value of investing in quality to meet corporate objectives and gain that competitive advantage. So this slide, I'd like to show this one because it really gives you a sense of our range and the value of our cross-industry approach, and how significant that is. We're taking inputs and applying the learnings and best practices across all of these industries, and feeding that back into the product in ways that improve quality management across all these different types of industries. So for example, like APQP practices from the automotive product design, that has enriched our new product introduction capabilities that Tom talked about today. Customer management from the life sciences app set, that's enriched our customer feedback capabilities and our non-conformance handling application set. So a lot of tie-ins, and we're always looking for those opportunities to ingest those learnings and turn that around into a best practice. All right, so no matter where you are in your journey, we're ready to help. We'd love to help. from calculating the ROI for your business case to mapping out your deployment strategy, providing the level of onboarding support you need. We've got a number of options from self-service to white glove hand holding, no matter what you need. With a comprehensive purpose-built QMS like ETQ, you're going to reduce costs, you're going to streamline operations, you're going to build compliance into your processes and mitigate all those supplier quality risks like we talked about today, resulting in improved efficiency, time to market with your products, sustainability, and the ultimate, bottom line results. And we'd love the opportunity to share our expertise and help you along your quality journey. So with that, I think we're making our way into Q&A. We've got a bit of a time. I'm going to just fast forward through that. Our next session, just to head up, we'll be back with the final episode in this series on June 22nd, and we'll talk about that final phase in that ETQ quality journey transformation phase. So with that, hi Tom, welcome back. Let's see, we've got some questions that have come in. So let's take a look at what we've got here. Let's see. I want to keep an eye. We might go a minute over, but so how do you put the favorite charts to show on the homepage? I know you're super excited to show this. I know you are, Tom. Are you prepared?
I am. I just realized I was muted. So there are a couple questions that are kind of related to each other that I want to try to address as quickly as possible.
Oh, okay.
Chart templates, how do they show up on the homepage? Locations, how does that work? So what I can do is show a couple of quick things, and I'll do that right now.
And kind of hit a couple of them at once. Yeah.
I'm not sharing my screen. I'm not sharing my screen, so I have to do it.
Oh, yes. Let me change you over.
It happens to all of us. See.
Making you presenter and
okay. Let me do this. Okay. Can everyone see this now?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. So first of all, the centralized reporting and centralized reporting and alerts utility, looks like this. You can define chart templates in the system, and I'm just going to open one. Let me just pull up get this thing wider. So the one that we just saw was the pie chart, which is this one. So this is the one that I showed earlier, and I just kind of clicked and drilled down on it. This would let you define your chart template. You can define the type of chart, you can define the view, you can define, the details around the chart, and it shows you what it looks like right down here. Long story short, you can set up many of these. So you can see that I have a bunch that have been set up in my demo data set. So once they're here, users can still use them. In fact, you can allow other users that are not administrators to come in and create their own chart templates and use them. But you need to be an administrator, or at least you need to have access to the homepage profile or the portal profile, depending on which version of Reliance you have, to be able to add it. So there's a new section now that you can use to define called favorite charts. So you just check that box, which is now going to be there if you've upgraded to our most recent version, and then you can define which chart template you want to show up. You can define whether it's just the chart. You can define whether it's just the report, which is actually a tabularized aggregation of the data below, or you can have it show both. So that's the first question or two that came up. And you can also make it wide. So if you want to show one chart per row, you saw that I had two. That's the default. But if you choose one chart per row, if your chart's a little more detailed, it would make it a little wider for you. So that's the first question. But we had to show the chart template to really answer that. The second one was the location hierarchy, which could include suppliers. So let me just quickly show you this. This is our list of location profiles that's also in the administration center. You can see that I have a whole bunch of supplier ones. So basically you would have, the way I have it set up is I have a top level called suppliers, and then I have a different level for each of the supplier names. We've done configurations where you can add the contact to the supplier profile and then click a button, and the system will not only automatically create a new user profile in the administration center for that new contact name using their email address as the username for that supplier, but it'll also create a new location profile and automatically create this here and also add it to their supplier profile. So therefore, any records that are associated with that supplier, you can then filter. And the way you filter is, let me just quickly come into the designer, and I know we're really close on time, but we have some great questions here. So what I can do is if I go into, let's say let's look at the SCAR view that we were just looking at before, which is one of the two views that I have set up to filter, I believe. So if I come into corrective action, I come into SCARs, and I come into open SCARs, you'll see that in the view setting, there's an option that says location filtering. So this is defining how you want to filter, primary location and lower location. So that means if you're someone, let's say you're an SQE that's responsible for all suppliers, and you're associated with the supplier level of the hierarchy, that means that you could see all supplier records in any view that's set up with this filtering. In this case, if I log in as a supplier like Metal Depot, like I just did, then the system will automatically only show me the records that are associated with that Metal Depot supplier. So that's really, once again, relatively short time to talk about it, but that's how that works. Am I missing anything, Angela? Any other
No,
questions?
I think you hit on all the questions there. That's great. Just looking back through here.
Okay. Of course, if you're an ETQ user right now, of course, ETQ Academy can help you with any of this. Your customer service, customer success manager can help you with this, or our tech support can help you with this. So there are a lot of options for us to help you.
Yep.
Excellent.
Great. Well, I think just 1 minute over, that's all right. So we will see you all back in June when we talk about transforming your organization through quality. And thank you all for being here today. Appreciate your participation, and have a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.